But again, that must be based on reasons that must persuade or convince this committee that this is desirable and necessary in the circumstances to retreat into camera to take any testimony from a nominee. It is not something that is determined, that can be determined up front. So even a nominee desires that, they must make the application to this committee and convince this committee that it is absolutely necessary and desirable to retreat into camera to take any evidence that the nominee may have. Again, it's important that the public also knows that in terms of the law, and this act is the first one that is trying to bring sanity in the process of approval hearings, or what is popularly known as vetting, that subsection 7 of section 6 provides that an approval hearing shall focus on a candidate's academic credentials, professional training and experience, personal integrity and background. And that this, in terms of subsection 8, that the criteria specified in the schedule shall be used by a committee during an approval hearing for the purposes of vetting a candidate. And what is in the schedule, members, is what is in the questionnaire. Indeed, each candidate, each nominee has been provided with a questionnaire. They are filled, and I am informed, which information I believe to be true, that in all our files we have copies of the questionnaires duly filled by the various nominees. So that the issues, the questions that the nominees have responded to, which we will also use in questioning the nominees, are also derived from the Act. So they are valid. But of course, what is said in subsection 7 is also important so as to guide ourselves. It's a question of professional background, educational background, the integrity of a nominee, so that will help the committee in arriving, and of course their background will help the committee in arriving at a decision regarding suitability or otherwise of the nominee. Of course, most importantly, which we have, and I believe as a committee, but it's important for the public to know that it's the law that provides that any person prior to the approval hearings and by written statement on oath shall provide the clerk with evidence contesting the suitability of a candidate to hold the office to which the candidate has been nominated. Therefore, any other method is unknown to the law and therefore strange. So any member of public that may be desirous of perhaps presenting themselves to address us is unwelcome. Even if you desire to sing a song for us to show how suitable and unsuitable a nominee may be, it is not known to the law. So unfortunately, because I'm saying this because I've received some communication from certain Kenyans who desire to address us. The only available opportunity for any such Kenyan to address us would be if we are in a seminar or in a workshop, but not during this exercise of vetting the various nominees. We can only apologize if you are not aware of that provision of the law. So please be accordingly informed. And I think with that, honorable members, having laid the background and also having confirmed that we have the requisite quorum unless the members have something they may wish to add by way of introductions at this point, we are ready, I believe, to receive the first nominee candidate. No members in it? Looks like from most faces we are ready to kick off. Very well, can you call the first nominee? Well, welcome to this morning sitting, and indeed the first sitting of this Committee on Appointments. Professor Prof Kobia. I will, in keeping with the practice and tradition of the House, have you know ourselves so that you know you are not among strangers. So I'll ask members to introduce themselves, but I'll begin with myself. My name is Justin Muturi, Speaker of the National Assembly of the Republic of Kenya and Chair of this Committee on Appointments. Maybe I'll ask members to introduce each one of them themselves.
My name is Aden Duale, Member of Parliament for Garissa Township and Leader of Majority.
Moses Cheboy, Deputy Speaker and Member for Kuresoi North.
Cecily Mbarire, I'm a nominated Member of Parliament and I'm also the Deputy Chief Whip.
And I'm David Kosing, Member of Parliament for Poko South, Chair Transport Committee and Member of this committee as well.
My name is David Gikaria, Nakuru Town East Constituency, Chair Energy, and a member of this committee.
My name is Yusuf Hassan. I am the Member of Parliament for Kamkunji, Nairobi County.
I'm Joyce Emanikor, Member for Turkana County, and a member of this committee. Thank you.
I'm Lillian Tomtom, County MP, West Pokot, Member of the committee.
My name is Abdul Rahim Daud, MP for North Imenti, a friend of the committee.
Chiminuru Angwenyi, Member of this committee and Deputy Majority Leader.
My name is Major Bashir, Member of Parliament, Mandera North, a friend of this committee.
Dr. Rachel Nyamai, MP Kitui Southern Chairlands.
Atib Abdallah Mashetani, Member of Parliament, Lunga Lunga constituency, Kwale County, and a Vice Chair of Lands Committee and a member of this Appointment Committee.
Kimani Shongwa, Member of Parliament for Kikuyu, Chairman, Budget and Appropriations Committee.
William Chepkut, Member of Parliament of Ainapkoi, Vice Chair, Special Funds Account Committee, and member of this committee. Thanks.
Benjamin Jomo Washari is my name. MP Mumias East in Kakamega County and Chief Whip, Majority Party, and a member of this committee.
David Olesankok, nominee 001, a member of this committee.
Hai Kamizigi, County Member of Parliament, Taita Taveta County, and member of this committee.
Sabina Chege, County MP, Muranga County, and Chair of Health and a member of this committee.
Sarah Korere, member of Laikipia North constituency, Laikipia County, a member of this committee.
Very well. At least now you know that the people that you are before by their names and the various areas or jurisdictions that they represent or interests. Kindly introduce yourself to us, and immediately thereafter tell us about yourself, your background, educational experience, professional, and also touch on now that you know you've been nominated to the position of Cabinet Secretaries in the Ministry of Public Service, Youth, and Gender Affairs. Why would you feel that you are suitable or perhaps more suited to that docket?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, let me start by appreciating your introduction and say that I'm grateful that I've been given this opportunity to appear before you as a nominee of the Ministry of Public Service, Youth, Gender Cabinet Secretary. My name is Prof Kobia. I was born in Meru and grew up in Meru, had the early education in primary in Meru, and I went to Kikuyu at Alliance Girls for my O and A level. I have a Bachelor's of Education from University of Nairobi, a Master's of Education from Kenyatta University, teacher education in particular. I also have a PhD in Human Resource Education from the University of Illinois in USA. Mr. Chairman, my education, especially PhD, has prepared me on the areas of human resource management, human resource development. And that experience, education background gives me knowledge that gives me credibility to champion such a ministry. Mr. Chairman, regarding my work experience, I started as a high school teacher. I moved on to work with the Kenya National Examination Council as a researcher and a test developer. And you can see that builds. If you go to become an examiner, if you've been a teacher, it's a building and expanding my experience. Then I also taught at teacher training college, in particular Kenya Science, which is a renowned college in this country for producing science teachers. And after teaching Kenya Science, and then I moved to Kenyatta University because there were opportunities in administration as well as teaching. While I was at the Kenyatta University, I decided to pursue my PhD because, as you know, if you're in the university, if promotion opportunities do not come unless you have pursued the highest degree or PhD. When I left finishing my PhD, I joined Commission for Higher Education that deals with regulating higher education in this country. I worked there for 2 years, but I still felt since I had acquired PhD, it was best suited in teaching, and I got moved to Strathmore University as a senior lecturer. From Strathmore University, I think I want now to center on my experience that relates to this nomination. The position of director KIA was advertised. I applied, I competed among 9 shortlisted candidates, and I was given the position. My experience at KIA is what I'm mostly proud of, because KIA is a government institution that is charged with the responsibility of capacity development for public servants. By the time I joined the university, the institution had been run down simply because you remember members and members that KIA, 80% of the facilities were given to University of Nairobi because we needed to expand higher education, especially in commerce. I transformed KIA in terms of reviewing of the curriculum, improving the infrastructure, developing staff. By the time I went there, there was only 1 person with a PhD. By the time I left, there were 9. And KIA was also among the flagship, Vision 2030 flagship, that I was given instruction by 2012, KIA should be transformed to Kenya School of Government. And in that relation, by 2012, we had developed an act, KSG Act, and KIA were transformed to Kenya School of Government. I think that was a major achievement, and it gave me experience in working in the public service and understanding how public service and especially the government works. From KIA, when I left actually in 2013 to join Public Service Commission, one of the biggest buildings in KIA is named after Prof Kobia after I'd left. To me, I feel it's a legacy that will live with that institution. Even my great-grandchildren will be able to see it. But the most important thing is, what is the institution doing for this country in terms of developing capacity for public servants? Today, it is used to induct all directors of state corporations, and you know we have over 280. It trains all public servants in the area of public sector reform, the public administration, public policy, strategic leadership, so that making institution to be around known, I think is a major contribution that still lives on, because even the institution became a center of Commonwealth Secretariat training program on performance management. Then in 2013, I moved to Public Service Commission as chair to the commission, and within that, when I came, we found we were the first commission. And the developing institution of Public Service Commission, we had to start with the strategic plan. After the strategic plan, we developed the structure to deliver that plan. We hired, especially the top level, and I think what I'm trying to articulate here, having top level people who can be able to strengthen the institution is very important. So in short, as I conclude, Mr. Chairman, is what am I bringing to this position? I'm bringing a very strong leadership competency in terms of visioning and sharing that vision with the staff and inspiring them to learn with me and the developed institution. I'm bringing a very strong capability in delegation and empowerment. I bring integrity and honesty into this job, and I bring wealth of knowledge and experience to the extent that establishing credibility why I am the Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Gender. For me, I'm persuaded and convinced I'm the right person. Let me also mention very quickly, Chair, the area of women. As somebody who comes from academician, I did a study on coping strategies of women senior leaders in the public service. That gave me an opportunity to understand the issues women face in this country. I have also done a study on Women Enterprise Fund, working with the Ministry of Public Service, just to understand. The Women Enterprise Fund was 5 years when we did the study 3 years ago. To what extent have the objectives of Women Enterprise Fund been achieved by that time? I think those findings give me a kind of knowledge of what issues are women in the business as far as government empowerment program are concerned. Youth, I'm quite comfortable with the youth because in the course of my own job, I travel and I listen to youth. And I get to know we have about 75% people who are youth under 35. And the struggles they have in employment, lack of skills, but I see what the government has done in terms of opening opportunities for the youth, because that is the future for this country. Therefore, I will partner and work with everybody else, because with my experience in the public service, no one ministry can deliver on its own. So capacity to partner and I work with other ministries that are working with the youth. I know ICT, I know the National Youth Service, I know many other programs that the government has put as a way of reaching out the youth. So I am competent actually to be considered for the position of Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Public Service, Youth and Agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very well. Perhaps I should have indicated to you that the committee has resolved that they may not spend in excess of 1.5 hours with any one of you, because we are a committee. I will open the session, but before I open the session to my colleagues, could you kindly give us your original CV for members to look at?
Five copies. The original CV.
They will be given back, just for members to have a look. They will be given back to you. Well, honour members, the floor is open. Very well. I notice the member for Pokot East, South, Pokot South, Honorable Kosing.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Professor Kobia. I have two issues that we seek clarifications. Number one is, Professor, how do you intend to address this issue of public service, particularly the connection or the role of Public Service Commission and county public service boards? And in relation, we wanted you to share with us and the people of Kenya, because there's a problem there. In counties, you see jobs being issued along the road. You know, people given job group, maybe P, Q, no advertisement, no competition, no job, growth. And that will create some imbalance in public service in the country, because what is happening nationally is different from what's happening at counties, and yet we lead one country. What will be a role and contribution in making sure that some of these things are done professionally? Secondly, the issue also that ails where you're going, public service, should Parliament approve you, will be issues on promotion. Some of us also have worked in public service. And remember, in job promotions and growth, You remember that policy that if you serve in a position for 3 years, then you qualify for a promotion. But the problem is it's not automatic, and the positions are not enough for people then to grow after 3 years. That gives people opportunities for favoritism or corruption. So how do you intend to address that so that a Kenyan in any position after 3 years has some hope or equal hope of growing to another position? Chairman, thank you.
Because you put in a bit two planks, maybe you could leave, you can allow the professor to respond.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member, for those questions. The role of PSC and the County Public Service Board. Honorable members, you know, when devolution took effect, some functions were devolved to the county. And if functions are devolved, that means you also devolve resources. So we transferred, or what we call deemed seconded, about 65,000 staff. Another entry point is Public Service Commission is supposed, excuse me, is supposed to be an appearance. If any member of the public or staff is aggrieved the way county public service boards have handled their appointment, promotion, transfers, they are supposed to appeal to PSC. For that reason, we find a nexus between national government in terms of PSC and county public service boards. Therefore, what we did develop human resource operations manual, which are supposed to be providing uniform norms on how staff are promoted in the county. And also the fact that we gave them the grading structure so that at the entry with the grading structure in government, of course, you know, is job group A up to job group V. Therefore, the outcome, there are many unintended outcome of what is happening with human resources in the county, and it's true. You find some people are moving from national government when an opening is at the county, and maybe they were job group L and then appointed a job group P. Of course, that is an anomaly. But these are some of our unintended outcome where you find that the 47 counties, they are just looking at how they get the human resource for their own county. And they, by the way, remember the law also allows them, their employer in their own rights, so they cannot listen to PSC if they think in terms of scarce resources. Perhaps take, for example, Turkana. Someone was in L in national government and has found a job P in Turkana, and the Turkana government is willing to pay. So what has been happening, it has really distorted the grading structure, but at the same time, I think what I will do is, we have what we call capacity assessment and rationalization program, which was done in 2013, which was supposed to advise what is the establishment for each county, what are the staffing levels for each county, and at the same time, what grading structure they should follow. Therefore, although we have not been able to implement this capacity assessment report that is ready, we have those issues. And what we have done, we have had meetings with the county public service boards just to share our human resource manuals so that they can be able to customize them. Remember, they don't use them as public service manuals, but they take the content, customize them to 47 different counties to be able to use them to manage their human resource. Moving forward as a ministry that are now going to the ministry, moving from PSC, then the ministry should be able to work together at either a summit level or intergovernmental committee to see, because at the end of it, national government staff, county government staff, we provide services to the citizen. Therefore, having harmony on how we manage human resource for performance, I think is very critical for the ministry to put specific steps. Therefore, I will review where are we, because I think data is very important. Where are cases of people who have been promoted to very high level? Are they even performing? Which counties have kind of not followed the due process? And in the process, maybe people feel some people have given due advantage, and that has demoralized others. So what I'm trying to say, Mr. Chairman, data is very important, and I will spend time studying where are we now, where do we want to go, because the transition has given us a lot of challenges. Not that, in my view, it's not expected, but if you are really doing transition with the devolution from the many devolved functions that were devolved, these challenges are about to be there. But now we have to put a mechanism, and I know intergovernmental committees and meetings, which my former CS have been involved, they have some baseline data, which now we could be able to find. Let's find our way, either through the summit, how we can harmonize how human resources managed both at the county and the national level for performance. The other question was to do with the promotions. Promotion in the public service is quite a straightforward matter, which has got some guidelines how you are promoted. When you are hired, depending on your qualification and the demands of the advert, you enter a certain job group. Especially if you are coming at your degree level, you enter more or less like a trainee, and after 3 years you're supposed to go, you enter job group K, then in 3 years you go to job group L, every 3 years, but it reaches a stage where automatic promotion is not given. Right from job group M, you cannot, to go to job group M, you must be subjected to an interview. Why? Because we need to find, do you have the competencies for those jobs? Not that I am also saying to move from K to L, it's just automatic even if you are not performing. Excuse me. Even there has to be a performance evaluation for you. Not everybody moves from K to L. There must be an evaluation which is annual so that you will be able to move, but generally that is allowed. Then when it comes to M, N, and moving forward, you have to be subjected for interview that looks for specific competencies, specific attributes. Therefore, to me, I would still support promotion. However, there's to open up, because I think what the honorable member is concerned is there are people who are saying they are stagnated in one job group for a long time. It is true, we are going to start looking at, there are some jobs, if I am N, P, and the Q, that job does not, it can be done by any of those people who are in that category. In my view, to open up promotions in some cadres, I will need to review where is the job done. Most of you who are in the public service, you know sometimes you might receive a letter, director receives a letter, marks it to deputy director, and deputy director marks it to assistant deputy director, then to almost further level. So you must ask, we are going to start asking ourselves, where is the job done? So even as we're saying there is a shortage of staff, can we be able to promote these people so that they are more motivated, and then we pin the job where it is done, so that this one of actioning various letters is likely to bring non-performance in the public service. Therefore, there are also many cases where people kind of complain they have not been promoted, but I think promotion is not like automatic. There is a criteria that must be fulfilled. However, we need also, if the vacancies are there and the ministry is not declaring them for people, which is the case in some cases, that the ministry is not telling us we still have more vacancies in job group N, and we need to promote those. So that, I think we should also not just sit and wait for the ministry to declare. We should have a better data that looks at the service and say, where are the people who entered at this year? How have they progressed? What can we be more proactive reaching out? Because we know a motivated staff is likely to give a better service. If they are demoralized in terms of having stagnated, we can see a problem that we should be able to address. That's one of the areas I will address by having data that informs who do we need to move where, and because of what competencies do they have. Because we want to make maximum use of that staff. Thank you.
I can see there's immense interest, but as you know, it's always good to move from one side to another. Now I move to the left of the chair and have Honorable Sarah Korere.
Thank you, Chair. Prof, I have 2 questions for you. One is, as envisaged in the Constitution, Article 10, subsection 2, and it talks about the national values and principles of governance, which talks about human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, and human rights. There is a recent report that is published by PSC that indicates that 6 populous ethnic groups have taken up more than 86% of the public service at the expense of the other 42 ethnic groups in Kenya. And it's also an open secret, Professor, that in this country we have some groups which are very marginalized and minority groups that are not found anywhere in the public service. In your capacity as a Cabinet Secretary for Public Service, how do you intend to handle that issue of bringing everybody on board and ensuring that there is equity in the public service? And number 2, it's about this gender debate. So much has been said about gender. And Professor, there is a general feeling that so much is being talked about the girl child and empowering the girl child, and could be we envisage a situation whereby in some years to come we'll have a serious crisis of the boy child being neglected. How do you envisage, or how do you intend to deal with this?
I think Professor can take one more from another one member. So as in keeping in the practice, well, member for Kikuyu, diversity, face of Kenya.
Thank you, Chair. And mine are 2 quick ones. One, Professor, you have spoken at length of your very strong competencies on issues to do with human resource management and even issues to do with women issues, even having done a study on the Youth Enterprise Fund and women involvement in the public service. But my concern is that I didn't hear much on the youth. In fact, in your presentation, you have spoken about having traveled widely around the country and listened to the youth, and you know the challenges they have with employment and lack of skills. But I have not heard you talk about what you did in your previous position in public service to deal with that problem of the youth. And you're not even telling us what you intend to do now as Cabinet Secretary in charge of the youth. Indeed, you have gone further to say that you will work with the ministries that are dealing with the youth matters, if I got you right. Yet I can see from the very description of your ministry, youth matters under your docket. 2 is the question of retirement age of public servants, and again coming from the office that you've been serving in. I would want to hear your view on whether we should reduce the age, the mandatory retirement age of people working in the public service, probably to give an opportunity to the youth in this country to be able to get access into the public service. In line, tied to that also is a question of extension of terms of service for certain prominent public personalities in public service. I would also want to hear your general views as to this issue that has been of great public interest in the last few years, people getting extensions of terms of service beyond their retirement age. Again, something that has denied the youth in this country opportunities to get in the public service. And now as CS nominee for that position, I would want to hear your general views on that.
Well, I think, Professor, you can respond to those.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member Sarah Korere. You didn't mention that the 6 large tribes in this country occupy almost 86% of the public service job. This is true, data speaks, and there could be reasons why the 6 tribes who are represented in national census, that for historical facts, these ethnic groups had an opportunity to enter public service early enough. On the other hand, this data is done from about 240, so sometimes also data need to speak and persuade what was met is about 240,000 public servants. It's not the entire public servant, it's more of the civil service. Therefore, 86% coming from those large tribes. When it comes to promotion, there's nothing much we can do because these people are already in the service, and when they compete, when you open positions for competing for promotion, we cannot deny you promotion because you come from another ethnic group so that you can get somebody else who did not merit to take that position. What the commission is doing right now, we have a representation, especially when it comes to new hire. We look at the 44, now there are 44 ethnic groups according to Kenya Bureau of Statistics, and we look at the representation as it is today in the public service, and then apportion in the strength of their representation to the new hire. But honorable members, you may remember that for a long time, the government has not been hiring. Therefore, that's why the incoming to take this, the rest who are left to share 14, is not really improving. But Public Service Commission made a deliberate effort that at a new hire, we are going to deal with that in representation so that you find those non-represented communities or marginalized communities have a slightly bigger number when it comes to new hire. We had a new hire recently, I think in 2 years, for Ministry of Interior, which where we hired around 800. We had another one for Ministry of Foreign Affairs about a year ago, which was around 120. We had, I think, provision officers. So the number coming in, and for the reasons you all know, because of the government and kind of frozen hiring until we are able to rationalize the staff who are on the ground, we have not, and for other reasons, because of the wage bill, we have not been hiring. As we're moving forward, I'm sure this is a matter that needs to be discussed across board with all stakeholders. First, finding where are their jobs, and if they are going to improve that status. Of course, it is slow because we don't know, the government does not hire as often as possible. However, now that we are also suffering succession management in terms of, in the next 2 years, almost 30% of our staff, the critical technical staff, will kind of be retiring. We can see a situation where we are able to advertise and recruit people at middle level so that they can be able to grow within the service. So that data, I'm not denying it, is true. And as a cabinet minister, I think I should be able to make effort in making sure, as with those which are represented, they feel their presence, they see as visible by numbers that are coming in when employment is opened. And that's what I'm saying, we are not only going to wait for the new hire, we are also going to have a new innovation to bring in professional staffs who might be out there in the private sector and be able to train them and grow the service. Honorable members, there has been also effort to bring people at the senior level, but you remember, if you are not really well wired for public service and you don't have experience, sometimes it might end up having a negative input. You remember the dream team? You can bring very senior people, but the public service being complex as it is, we are now persuaded me as a nominee that you had better bring them at middle level, then they grow by being their capacity developed to work in the public service, which is complex, not straightforward like private sector. I think the other question is gender. Have we focused too much on the girl child and ignored the boy child? In my view, Honorable Chair, I think there is that perception. And when I was preparing for this to appear here, I read the ministry actually has gone out to do a study to find out to what extent is the boy child endangered. Because sometimes we cannot act just on opinion of what you see on what we hear. But if we remember where the empowerment for girl child came, it previously, because of sociocultural, patriarchal kind of socialization, girls have a long way to go. Now that there have been some gains, in my view, we should not forget the boy child. But I will not move with speed. I will first look at that study and see what are the recommendations of how the boy child is not endangered, because in my thinking, gender does not just mean women. It's gender equality and women empowerment. So gender is both men and women. So when, as a community, as a nation, if we realize some signals that are indicating that we are kind of forgetting the boy child, I think I would put a specific effort so that also boys have got programs that reach them out and they are given equal opportunities to compete with the girls. The next question is from Honorable Ichungwa Kikuyu. I have not talked much about youth. And the question is, what have I done in the past regarding youth? In my previous job as a chair of Public Service Commission, of course, we do travel out. And you get to know how youth, you listen to them in terms of they don't have jobs, and they tend to kind of be idle. You ask then why don't they have jobs? Then you find they don't have skills. We also look at our education system, which tends to prepare people. Even if you live at Form 4 or at university, you are looking for employment. Therefore, at least I have that information that youth, there are problems with youth in terms of employment, job creation, issues to do with if they are idle, they are going to be radicalized by whoever might find use for them because they don't have any source of income. Therefore, from that interaction, and I have also been to forums where I've seen what the government has done in terms of youth empowerment, where they are receiving some loans through Youth Enterprise Fund, and in that loan, I've listened to very successful stories of young people who got into groups of 5, got a loan, started a business, and now they are coming to a forum to share that experience. I didn't witness that. So much as they complain that there are no information, they don't know how to apply for this loan, those who have done it become a good model that can tell the story, so that the youth who are not able to find some employment, I think they should be able to see that their colleagues are able to become productive. Otherwise, of course, I interact with the youth. I'm a teacher. Therefore, within the universities, and right now as we are talking, the percentage of youth in the public service is 19. Those who are 35 are below. So it's not like youth are completely ignored. The only challenge has been because hiring has not been going on for quite a number of years because of austerity measures. It might look like it is a big problem. And I don't think it's a Kenyan problem only. Even the continent of Africa, we are struggling with what are the dividends can we get from the youth. So I want to put a program, and that's why I'm saying I want to look at who else as youth program besides them, because my docket is the one which is going to have the youth, which has the youth. There are programs that have been out there. I'm particularly aware of where youth empowerment by giving them the loans, by also having National Youth Service move to every constituency or every county. I could see there were about 257, and be able to use the youth, give them a certain income, which is 521. They are able to keep to use some of that money, and the rest is retained in the circles. Therefore, I'm aware of all those initiatives. All I need to do is to champion the ministry to review so that we can deepen reaching out for the youth, because if we don't address the issues of the youth, then the nation will be heading to the wrong direction. They are 75% of the population. There is another question regarding retirement age. Should we reduce retirement age? I think this country made a decision that they wanted people to retire at 60, and that is what is happening now in the public service. We retire people at 60. I don't think that if you retired people at maybe 55, and you, of course, 55, you would really create a significant number of youth coming. But in my view, I'm very much convinced in my mind, if public service is efficient and effective, it would now create or facilitate an environment where private sector is thriving, can create jobs. Therefore, having an efficient public service is one way of addressing the shortage of jobs. So I would rather we still retain it at 60. Those who are being extended, this is normal in terms of, and there are very, very few. I don't think they would even reach 1%. This is where an organization writes a ministry, a department, or agency writes it to Public Service Commission, and they justify why do you have to retain X, Y, and Z for 1 year or two, and they have to justify: one, they have special skills; two, the job, there's nobody else in that department to do that job; three, the person is willing. So there is a guidance and a regulation of how we renew. The kind of the thought that there could be people who are taking advantage of that, for me, is something that need to be, I don't know how you check that, but I'm sure if the department has justified, even in private sector, if there is that need to put that, to keep that special skill, maybe doctors, engineer, or someone even in administration, and the department saying we have nobody else who can do this job, I don't see why we can't give them 1 year, 2 years, and in the meantime, put them into task of, can you develop another one? But we know in the public service, because of the nature and complexity, when people don't seem to be very concerned with succession management, and that's why the ministry has just put out a succession management policy that now, when implemented, it can address some of these gaps of succession management. So I don't feel that the youth have been denied the jobs in the public service, because if public service was very efficient, actually jobs are out there. Remember, there are JIRA jobs, which we are talking about 100. They are not necessarily found in the public service. There are devices in the ICT are also opening. Where else can jobs be found for the youth, so that public service is not seen like a real employer? Public service role is to facilitate service delivery, to facilitate wealth creation, to facilitate that environment that makes ease of doing business become better for our country. I feel, Mr. Chairman, I have covered the question that has been asked.
Very well. The diversity. Honorable Sankok.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I have two quick questions. Prof, if you succeed, you'll be in charge of a ministry that houses the affirmative action groups, especially when we talk of women, youth, and persons with disability, taking into consideration the National Government Affirmative Action Fund, which is one of the state corporations that is in your ministry. What will you think that are immediate issues that ought to be addressed in that ministry for us to be able to achieve the Vision 2030 as well as the Big Four agenda? And how do you think you'll be able to tackle those issues? Number two, have you ever been mentioned in any integrity report? And if yes, elaborate.
Member for Turkana County. Manico.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mine will be very brief because Honorable Ishungwa seems to have read my mind and asked part of my question on youth. But there's a part that I really want to ask a question on, taking cognizance that the Youth Fund has in the past gone through some challenges and has had problems. We have had problems of scandals, loss of funds, theft, financial malpractices, and where we lost lots of money. And now, what mechanisms and approach will you employ to ensure that this does not recur? Really knowing that the youth play a critical role in the national development, talking of social cohesion, which Kenya really yearns for now, economic prosperity and political stability. Thank you.
Honorable Chepkut.
Thanks, Chair. We value your presence, Madam Professor. Having been a career civil servant and an accomplished entrepreneurship scholar, I have the following to ask you. One, our youth, especially university graduates, are opting for white-collar jobs as opposed to self-employment. Two, 65% of our population are youth. There is rise in global terrorism, radicalization, violent terrorism, and so on and so forth. What policy shift will you inject to make sure that the 4 pillars of the president are achieved? Thank you, and God bless you, Chair.
Professor, are you able to take one more?
No, Chair, allow me just to address
but be brief.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. The question from Honorable Sinkong on youth, women, youth, and the disability regarding the affirmative funds and how the big 4 are going to be addressed. Chair, I think the government is the right direction to have an affirmative fund given to women, youth, and people living with a disability for the purpose of empowerment. Therefore, looking at the program which are in the Ministry of Youth, Public Service, Youth and Gender, I will take time to understand how this fund has worked. I was trying to review some literature and I found that quite a bit of it has been given, but the uptake is slow. And I could imagine that moving forward, we need to find if the challenges are the capacity to understand the procedure of accessing these funds. I think then we should be able to come up with an initiative to reach out how these funds can be made available. I see these funds also and the empowerment for women and the youth and the people living with a disability fitting very well with the big 4, because the youth, the women, can be able to be engaged in some targeted specific activities in the area of manufacturing. If we talk about manufacturing, and we know what we need in terms to be able to manufacture, women are doing a lot of value addition. And this is an area that they could focus or using those funds in their entrepreneurship. They could do that, women and the youth as well. I am also seeing that youth, women in particular, let me deal with the women in particular. That I've said women could be used in manufacturing, especially value addition. Women could be used also as a social lever in terms of food security, because they are the ones who do quite a lot of labor in the farms. I could see also women contributing labor if they are empowered. When we are doing affordable housing and especially low-cost housing, they could be source of labor if this information was brought to them, and then their affirmative fund could facilitate them to access these new found jobs through the Big Four. So to me, the Big Four fits very well in the Vision 2030, and the various groups can find what they are going to do to contribute towards realization of this Big Four. And I'm sure every ministry now is trying to align in their strategic plan what targets are they taking from this Big Four. The youth should be able to do quite a lot of work in terms of manufacturing. Also, they could do also value addition. They could also be, like now we know in manufacturing we don't have a lot of people in terms of technicians, and in that terms of manufacturing, in terms of housing, we need almost over 500,000 people. Therefore, there is an opportunity for youth to be trained through Tibet, through National Youth Service, to be able to take these jobs now are coming. So the youth have been getting some jobs, some income, but at the same time they'll be contributing towards the realization of the Big Four. I am also seeing the Big Four, especially affordable health care, I think also targeting the youth the other way, that can you reach them out so that they are covered maybe in a national hospital insurance fund. Very quickly, this one is not where I've been asked, have you ever been, by Sonko, have you ever been mentioned in any integrity? I have never been mentioned to any integrity. Nobody has ever brought any allegation to me that I have been involved in any matter that is dishonest, issues to do with integrity or corruption. I have not. So unless maybe this committee have something which I could respond, right now I'm not aware of any. In my previous work, current work, that has not been brought to me. The member for Turkana, Manika, youth fund scandals, I think we are all aware of those scandals. It's unfortunate that youth meant to support the youth could find other avenues and not be used for the purpose that they are supposed to be used. But I'm aware also, when I reviewed the documents on the docket of youth fund, that changes have been done in terms of higher recruiting new people. Also, some mechanism have been put in terms of internal controls, and I'm sure that the laws moving forward, in my view, I've never worked in an institution where funds have been misappropriated. So I'm sure I will have those strong internal control, accountability mechanism, so that it should that happen under my watch, I think whoever is implicated, I think should be dealt with as per the law, so that it makes a good statement to other. So I think right now the youth fund is on course. Of course, it's not enough, but as I said, when I went around, a lot of youth were saying they don't know the procedure of how to access this youth fund. But for me, whatever retro money might be coming my way in the ministry for the youth, it will be used for the intended purpose by strengthening institution. I think one strength that I bring to this position, I'm good at building organization development, strengthening institution, such that these institutions are not personality based, that you have put very clear a strategic plan. You have the structures, you have systems, processes, and procedures that can be followed. Nobody needs to ask anybody, how do I go about that? There's a document that guides. If we leave such kind of strong institutions, then they shouldn't be able to actually to move on even when we are long gone. And I believe right now there is that negative publicity that youth fund has been misappropriated, but moving forward, we'll make sure that we have a mechanism for making sure that it is well used. We also have, besides also, how do we emphasize the uptake so that the youth have the information and their capacity built to be able to access the funds that are available. Mr. Chairman, also we have heard a lot of, I have heard from the youth that some money could be used not as efficiently as it should. Maybe we are using in sensitization kind of workshop, seminars. I think we could use that, in my view. I could use that money better, maybe it reaches to the needy youth rather than maybe a lot of studies, a lot of workshops, a lot of seminars. We must also review and find is that the best way. I think as I review the information from the ministry, a lot of policies have been done. We have very good documents. So my role now is to figure out how do we implement with clear targets, which we can report in year 1, year 2, year 3, and at the same time execute what is expected from the ministry. The final, one of the questions that having been a career civil servant and now and teaching entrepreneurship, university graduates are opting for the white collar job. This is a real problem, and I think is the way we are schooled. It's common that people go to university for the purpose of getting an employed job. Moving forward, and I think even parents, if you ask our parents, you remember the Deputy President and the Ministry of Education through TVET, they have opened up polytechnics and upgraded them, equipped them, trained lecturers, but a lot of us are reluctant to take my child into a polytechnic. But I think now people are seeing this as a reality, that any youth who has any skill, masonry, carpentry, they have better opportunity to get a job than a youth who is coming from the university. I'm aware the universities are also confronting this problem. They're saying now, let's have a course on entrepreneurship so that the students, they open their mind as they go. Where do they see opportunities? Where can they take risk? Where can they be able to get either self-employed, because the white-collar jobs are no longer there. But you'll find quite a big lot that is frustrated waiting for white-collar job, and that's why I would think if I were to confront that problem, I would start is right from parents, from the youth themselves, that yes, I've been to university, I did a BA, so can I go to this vocation training and get another training so that to increase my level of employability. So that's, I think, what the ministry will be able to start getting. And also the other thing is, as I was looking at the literature, the whole issue of data, who is where, with what training, and with what qualification may be university, that data is not there. And sometimes we have a tendency of working on opinion rather than data. But if we have information, right, maybe at the constituency level, who are the youth here, what is their skill, what is the kind of job can they do, perhaps then the ministry could work with some intervention to see how that can be addressed. I'm sure our members of parliament would also be very useful in that consultation to see in your constituency, where are the youth, what are they doing? Because with that data to me is very, very important. Of course, also using Huduma centers, which are really now going out to mashinani. Youth have got an opportunity even to learn the opportunity the government is putting forward so that they can be able. So we, the ministry, should be able to reach out and to connect them with these Huduma centers so that they can benefit from not just being a graduate youth who is unemployed, but knowing what are the opportunities that exist. The issue of youth and terrorism, I think this is a question that has bothered all of us in Kenya, and I'm sure even in Africa and the world, that iron ore mines are likely to be targeted for terrorism. But we also see another pattern where terrorism tend to be more in marginalized areas, slum. So that pattern or that kind of threat, then we must ask what programs should we have that target marginalized slums so that they are not radicalized. And let me also say, as I was preparing, I don't think even those with jobs, it's not just, we cannot just apportion those without jobs, unemployed are the ones who are radicalized. Even those who have jobs and the extremely brilliant people, they are also a target for radicalization. And in my view is when we don't engage youth and listen to them, and especially when we work with the communities from where they live, then we can see those pockets of radicalization, what the ministry will have targeted kind of intervention to be able to deal with, to reduce that, because I think it's a huge problem. But I don't want to leave it just for those people without jobs, even people with jobs. But we should be able also to get the data. We cannot just hear maybe one case of somebody and generalize it that the whole area has been radicalized. We still need data, and the ministry, if approved, I would target on that. What I'm seeing, Mr. Chairman, is there are so many issues that for the youth, for the women, but we must come to the table, maybe, and this gives me an opportunity, maybe if I can get to the cabinet, because we must be able to plan so that we are not like helter-skelter busybodies trying to address every problem. There must be a systematic way of addressing some of these issues so that there is no duplication, there is no kind of, you know where you are going. And for me, I'm a very structured person. Therefore, if things are not very kind of guided by some information and the decision made, then it makes it very difficult. So this opportunity being in the cabinet, I could rally among my colleagues and see how do ministries work together to deliver on these big four, because we all agree no one ministry can deliver. That is also a skill that we need to have within the public service in terms of staff, that they now the working and the responding and the being able to report to more than one office is the reality of the public service jobs of the future. So I think a lot need to change if the public service has to be more efficient and be able to support the realization of the big four. And I think it is clear, some ministries are quite at the center of it, others are support, but each one of them is needed. And our capacity to be in the cabinet, scrutinize that, analyze that, do a plan, and after making a plan, look at every ministry and find what people do we need there, at what levels, and what performance evaluation we are going to put in place so that everybody is measured and held accountable. And I think that's one of the problems we're having in the public service. Performance management is not as it was. Before, we used to have performance contracting. Because of devolution and those transitions, we seem to have gone slow on performance contracting. But whatever we call it, people must have clear target, clarity of roles, then target, then they are facilitated with the tools and the working environment, and then they are measured. I should know how am I going to be measured with my target and how often. That the ministry, if approved, will put a management accountability framework for performance. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I give this chance to the Deputy Speaker. And honourable members, we have less than 20 minutes with the candidate.
Thank you. And congratulations, Professor, for being nominated. But I noticed when you were highlighting what you have done in the last few years, you are not very bold with the ones you did in the last 5 years, which is where you are chair of Public Service Commission, you actually highlighted very well what you did and your achievements in the KIA. Now, I wanted you to really come on with that and pursuing what Honorable Shungwa has asked. What is this skill? Because this, we need to be practical. What is this specific skill which probably you have come across in your time, especially in the last 12 years when you are dealing with these very, very relevant areas relevant to the ministry that you've been nominated to, that you couldn't get, that 60-year-old man or woman wouldn't have been able to have been done by a 45-year-old person or 50 or even 55? What is this skill that you came across? Do you have a specific individual, for example, that you can pinpoint and say, during my tenure as a person in the Public Service Commission, this particular person was completely irreplaceable? And I'm saying that, Professor, because you see the ministry you've been nominated to is a fairly big one, which on the one hand you are dealing with matters gender, you are dealing with youth, so that you cannot be able, if you succeed, you will not lean to one particular one to the detriment of another. And lastly, on the issue of the general public service way of doing things, have you ever thought of trying to incorporate now parastatals? Because I had one of my colleagues ask you about the county service boards. Have you ever thought of trying to bring in the parastatals so that as a government you would be dealing with a uniform way of handling matters so that there are no conflicts?
Leader of the majority party.
Thank you, Chair and Speaker. And congratulations, Professor Kobia, for your nomination. I have two small questions. One, you are going to a ministry which in the 11th Parliament was deviled with corruption. You're going to deal with NYS. And NYS was a hot potato both to your predecessors and of course the Huduma centers and youth. And in fact, youth fund, millions were lost. And these are reports which are existing in Parliament. And what's happening is that only the top is being changed. It's only the ministers. The other people who are involved with this grand corruption are still in your ministry. So what are you going to do? How do you want to deal with the cancer of corruption in your ministry? Because Parliament is going to put you under spot based on the previous reports. Number two, and very fundamentally, if you look at Article 132, subsection 4, and this one I want you to answer me as a former chair of the Public Service Commission. Article 132, subsection 4A says, and I want to read for your permission, Mr. Chair, that the President may perform any other executive function provided for in the Constitution or in national legislation and except as otherwise provided for in this Constitution, and may establish an office in the public service in accordance with the recommendation of the Public Service Commission. The President has recently created new positions of Chief Administrative Secretaries. In a very candid answer, did the President consulted you? If yes, did you provide the relevant recommendations to the President in establishing those positions? And was that recommendation, the minutes and everything, was it availed to the President? This is an answer that the country wants to know, so that those who have gone to court can also hear from this committee, because you are the chair. So before you leave the chair, and if this House approves you, were you consulted in accordance with Article 132, subsection 4A?
And last one from the member for Muranga.
Thank you, Chair. First and foremost, I want to congratulate Professor for having been among the few women who have been named in the cabinet chair. As women of Kenya, we are very proud of her, and also for having a very rich CV. We are very proud to see the achievement of women in this Republic of Kenya. Chair, mine was a clarification and two quick ones. First and foremost, there's a question that was asked by Honorable Sarah Korere, and I want to ask Professor, now that you're in the public service, is it a crime to belong to a specific ethnic group? From what my colleague had asked before, she mentioned about 6 communities that are populous and that have dominated the public service. When I looked at the Constitution, that is on Article 27, 4, it says the state shall not discriminate directly or indirectly against any person on any ground, including race, sex, pregnancy, marital status, health status, ethnic or social origin, and so on. And so in the public service, do you look at ethnic background or merit? That's my first question. Second question is what several members have alluded about the retirement age of 60 currently, and having a huge burden in this nation that our youth are not employed, and most of them also looking for white-collar jobs. And my biggest question is, we already know there's a big burden with the budget of this nation, where we are struggling with over 60 billion Kenya shilling on the pension. And my very direct question is, what are your thoughts on the long-term and practical and sustainable solutions on, as we know for now, the government pays for this money. What do you think is a practical and a sustainable solution on the issue of pension in this Republic of Kenya? And the last one is the issue of the 2/3 gender principle. As you come into the ministry that deals with gender, what do you think is a quick solution to handle this issue of the 2/3 gender principle, an issue that is the Constitution? We as Parliament are also struggling with it. In the public sector, we are also struggling with it. What do you think is a way forward on 2/3 gender principle? Thank you, Chair.
Professor, we have only 10 minutes to be with you. Okay. So you struggle to respond to those questions within that period.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair, for the questions that have come. A member, Deputy Speaker, did mention that I did not articulate what have I done at the PSC. And we are the very first commission after the constitution of Constitution 2010. And you remember when we came, there was only a very kind of simple act, Public Service Act, just to establish us. The next journey was to start working on Public Service Commission Act, which is comprehensive enough, dealing with the whole issue of from establishment of the appointment to transfer, which for the entire public service. I'm happy to report it took quite a long time. It is a political process and a lot of interest. Now we have the act. This week, we are working on regulations. So I think that is something we have left to strengthen the institution and for a tool that can be used by all public servants as far as managing human resources is concerned. We have also come up with human resource policies which govern the entire public service, which are all shared by the county. I think that is another achievement. I said we also hired new, because of the implementation of the strategic plan, we kind of restructured the whole commission that can become more efficient and more effective. I think another one I would like to mention, you do remember I helped this country deliver a Chief Justice, a Deputy Chief Justice, and one judge of the Supreme Court. I think in that it was a struggle. It's one of my, because I kept on reminding them, if we don't deliver, then we put this country into darkness. And dealing with the lawyers, Mr. Chairman, you know how it is, who have a lot of interest, and all of them are coming from judicial, and I was coming from the other side. I think it's one of the achievements that, regardless how they are, but they are in place. I think that is a plus for the country. Therefore, I take that one, like, in fact, as a result of that, I was awarded a medal by the head of state. That is Moran of Golden Heart. And I am one of the public servants who is very well decorated. I have OGW, CBS, just on my contribution in the public service. I think those are the major one I could say for the Public Service Commission. And there is a question, what specific skill that we missed? Let me say these are mostly in technical areas, science-based, like secretary, water. You might find any other person from that secretary in job group T or S, the next person is job group N. Why? Also medical. You find doctors, and Mr. Chairman, I think this is something I am also going to consider how we deal with it. We hire people in medical, people in technical, like engineers. The first 10 years, by the time they are getting to 10, 12 years, we have lost 80%. Therefore, in that, we must think, what is this? Even if we are talking about the wage bill, which has been raised, we still need to think, if we really need these engineers, we need doctors, what is it that we are going to attract and retain? Definitely, if then they leave after some time, then you find that gap of why those who have stayed, they are being asked by their ministry, because Public Service Commission does not decide who stays. A ministry request makes a justification. And for few cases, I don't think if you look at the data of how many people, there are actually 680 something. Those people who have retired at 60, no, that's why it's important to have data. If only there are 686, those who have been retained in public service for 1 year, 3 years, then I think even if you do it away with those, then the youth you bring is very insignificant. I'm not belittling that they should retire, but only give an extension to somebody who is able to do a certain function, which if they left, the service would suffer. And I think is around or in the practice. The fact that you are 60 doesn't mean you perform less, but we find how can that service then be better so that also youth, because the other youth get jobs elsewhere. So I mentioned especially engineers, people in ICT, people in medical. Sometimes we want to retain like a deputy director medical service, deputy director veterinary services, just because it's a very specialized technical area with scarce skills. Then we give them that 1 year or 2, depending on justification from the ministry, and it is legal and is allowed. Linda of majority, how am I going to deal with the corruption in the National Youth Service? It's unfortunate, and we all know in this country a lot of money was lost. But I'm happy to report Public Service Commission was also involved to hiring the Director General who is there now. And I think since he came, there have been management controls put in place. They have been able to register even in recruitment biometrically for those recruits. They have also been able to review their electronic procurement and the payment system. So this is work in progress. We will spend more time, as if I am successful, I would really want to spend more time in National Youth Service looking at their plans and the future. Because I could see there are some programs that they started but are not able to sustain. Because starting is one thing, program for the youth countrywide, but sustaining them. Another problem where I sensed sometimes payments have not been done. That means people are in dissolution because they were in these cohorts which just were paid partly and their money was put in the circle and it has not come through. I'm alive to those problems, and I will put, if I'm successful, I should be able to work with the team there. I am one person who does not believe that when you go, you must remove everything on the table and start. In my view, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Collection measures have started, and just need to ensure with a clear target that we are strengthening the institution so that we don't lose more money. National Youth Service budget is huge. Therefore, we also need to have very competent people with integrity running that institution. I noted also almost the top level except the DG, they are acting, and you know the limitation of people acting, like 10 are acting top. So I think one of the things I will do is competitively, being also as a military discipline force, we need to think and consult, widely including members of parliament, say who are the right people who can run that institution, taking into account National Youth Service has a big role in Big Five. You can see them going to manufacturing, like making garments. They are also construction. They are also in vocational training together with TVET. So that, to me, even it look like a whole ministry by itself. So then the cancer of corruption, I think that's what I was dealing with. I think there's a high level of corruption in the public service, not just the way people view. One, to me, that is attributed to when service is delayed, people think somebody wants something. Two, in the procurement, I think sometimes they have been thought public servants are need to get something in order to render that service or to facilitate the procurement. I think this is real, and I think this cannot be solved just by our ministry alone, but we will champion, we will be in forefront. If any investigation is found that anybody, I think it's very clear that the person need to leave so that they can make big statements. So, but as a country chair, we also need to think what intervention do we need to give, so that, because we have hyped our country corruption, until in the corruption index we are quite low. And sometimes I tend to think it's because we are such an open society, anybody can come in and write anything. So, and maybe other countries don't do it. So much as there is corruption, when we kind of highlight it so much and don't highlight the good that is happening, then we also lose some investors who think to come to Kenya, you need to budget for some corruption so that you can be able, which means doing business would be quite expensive here. And then the same jobs we are looking, then they will not be forthcoming because our ease of doing business is riddled with corruption. I'm going to the last, more or less like the last one. This is Article 132(4)(a). The Constitution is very clear. It is saying that the President can establish any office in the public service. It does not even say at the job group A or V. That means he has a attitude. In consultation and recommendation of Public Service Commission, in the matter under consideration of Chief Administrative Secretary, the consultation was done, justification was done, looking at the previous administration, how cabinet secretaries were overwhelmed by what was on their table, and it was thought, if we can have that level, just below the cabinet secretary, who can only perform delegated function by the CS, I think then, one, you bring efficiency in the ministry. So, and even if it means where the CS is not able to attend some meetings, he can do it by delegation. And one area that most of the cabinet secretary were not able to, even liaison with the county, they were not able to do that because we need to be one as a country. Liaison with the parliament, the minister will still be coming to parliament. But before you come, there's a lot of preparation and engagement to know exactly how you need to package the responses to the parliament. So honorable members of parliament, I think that position was created with the full justification within the constitution and within the law. The other question is, and we did in writing, write a report of the whole process and did a recommendation in writing to His Excellency the President. From Muranga, Honorable Sabina Chege, it's not a crime to belong to any ethnic group. We use a particular criteria for promotion. However, we are allowed to use affirmative action. If you feel in the service this particular group is overrepresented, I think using affirmative guidelines, you can be able to reach out. For example, even this position now I'm having, I'm not the most qualified, but you have to take one person. In the sense that there are many, you could interview people, and there are almost 5 qualified. But if you want to do an affirmative, you might say, okay, on the gender representation in this ministry, I think we need to take a man. Or on gender representation, we need to bring a woman. This woman might be number 3. So I think we are around to do that affirmative action. And first, even in affirmative action, you must make it on merit. So it's not like you are getting somebody with not. First, you have qualified. Two, then that affirmative action which we are using for youth, women, and the people living with disability and the marginalized. And I think the Constitution does mention that and allow that. The next question was, the pension is getting too high for this country in the public service. You remember even this extending the age to be 60, and something to do with, does the government have enough money to pay people when they reach 55? It was kind of a stopgap measure, and that's why it now went to 60. It is still not sustainable, and my ministry will champion, if appointed, to implement what we call contributory scheme. And I think a lot of work has been done in that area, so that if I come to the public service, I can be able to make a contribution, maybe 7%, and my employer 15%. And at the end of it, when I move with it. It looks more sustainable, and that's what most parastatals, which are public service, do. So I think it's an area that we need, with the consultation with the stakeholders and Treasury. I think we need to move that direction. There was a question regarding parastatal. What are we doing? What would our ministry be doing regarding parastatal? I think there is a major reform agenda for parastatals, because I think they have not performed as expected. But I remember also, right now, parastatals report to their ministry. And in the process of, you remember there's a parastatal reform, which now I think there are 2 bills that were established. So in the process of streamlining through those bills, I think we should get parastatals being able to deliver government policies, because they're established to deliver a certain specific policy. And they perform better, so that they are not not as efficient as they should be. So through the Ministry of Public Service, because I think that generally public service also is concerned how service delivery is done. So UMB should be able to find a window where we can work with the stakeholders, SCAC, State and Advisory Committee, and also look at those reforms and they put a specific implementation plan, including where the laws, I think, were supposed to come to the Parliament. So I think with that, Honorable Chair, I would like, I think I've finished what... No, there's a 2 dance gender. Sorry, that is very important. I think 2 dance gender, it was a very good affirmative action. And I think things are in place as far as county is concerned, because if you don't elect enough of each gender, they will be nominated. That is happening. And what that means, then counties even are supposed to pay much more than they would have paid in terms of salaries and allowances. It is supposed to be actually punitive, so that we as citizens move towards electing people in their right representation. In judiciary, I was looking at the data, and judiciary is doing very well as far as that percent is concerned. Look at the magistrate, all levels, the High Court, and actually there are some even at 41, except maybe Supreme Court, where we are 28. And I think 28 is not bad. That means maybe in the next, if that affirmative action could be made, I think it should be realized. In executive, this problem does not, it is not there, because ours is appointive. And for whenever we are appointing people, we look at the 30%. So right now at the top level in government, actually we are 29. That is looking at the PS level is already that rule is met. On maybe the cabinet, we are saying maybe 28. On job group N and the bureau, we are at 43. So I think it's on the executive is done, judiciary is done, is the parliament. Parliament, this is now where you are struggling with 2 thirds. I think, in my view, a lot of because a lot of work has gone into it. You are struggling with it. We have not found a solution. I think still further negotiation, dialogue, still need to go into this, so that you can decide. Should you ask the parties, the political party, to make some representation, so that they are there, because other recommendation, in my view, would be so radical, because there's one time I say, why are we struggling with this? Why don't we have from every constituency a man and a woman? You vote them. Then they come 50-50. But I know that can be also another lengthy before we get there, because the Constitution does not allow that. But it is possible, and I think the task is this way, you are Honorable Chair. So we will consult and see maybe how do we address transgender. I know the ladies in this parliament have fought a big fight regarding this, but still we need more negotiation, more dialogue to find a solution. Although you need a registration, but I know many times you can have a registration and doesn't work. That registration must also be agreed, owned, and thinking through how is this going to happen. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Very well. I think, as you can appreciate, there are several members who still needed to continue engaging with you, but unfortunately, as a committee, we have taken a decision that will not take more than 1.5 hours. Of course, some of the issues that you've addressed, and more particularly that one on the 2/3 gender rule, is work in progress. Just the other day, the leader of the majority party did sign a bill proposing to amend the constitution. We see whether again we will make it. But of course, I think the sovereign, who is a citizen of this country, is also making efforts, because in the last parliament, from the 290 constituencies, we only had 16 women elected by the sovereign. The women have put more effort, and there's an increase by 7 more to 23. So even percentage-wise, we were ahead of even countries like the US. We moved from 19.7% to 22.78%. 2 days ago, Britain was celebrating 100 years since the time women were given the right to vote. So it's work in progress. We hope if you are confirmed, if you are approved by the House, because the House will be, this committee will be retreating, that you through the various committees of the House will have opportunity to engage with more members of the House, and in trying to advance those ideas about particular representation, and areas about targeting resorts, and ensuring that everybody is able to deliver on what they have been given as their targets. So, Professor Margaret Kobia, we thank you for honoring this invitation to appear before this committee. We will release you now, and the committee will be considering. Please make sure that you don't forget your original CVs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chairman, for the opportunity. I'm happy.
Well, that's the Appointments Committee there, chaired by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi. They've just finished vetting Professor Margaret Kobia, CS nominee for Public Service, Youth and Gender Affairs. She's also the immediate former Public Service Commission chairperson. They put her to task on a couple of issues or a couple of things that she will be dealing with should she sail through in terms of her nomination, matters of public service, the youth and gender, some of the key talking points that